we worked with content producers all the time. I mean, there were people producing police shows and teacher shows, and I mean, there's all kinds of stuff being thrown at us as pilot pitches constantly. And we'd look at the script and we'd say it doesn't fit the model. But the problem was we couldn't tell the person who wrote the script that it didn't fit the model because they weren't even supposed to know there was a model.
Right.
So we would just reject it. And they would say, but it's great. And we'd say, yeah, but it's missing something. And they'd say, well, what's it missing? And we'd say, you need a little bit more this or that. And we would have this indirect conversation with the content producer. And then they'd say, all right, I'll send you another draft. And they would go off. And now remember, we're not paying for this. They're paying for this. That's all we cared about. Eventually, by creatively rejecting the content we were getting, eventually we'd get a script that followed our model, and then we could produce it as a pilot. And
wow,
one time out of 10, it was a hit. So
wow,
and they would never know. They never knew. They just say things like, "Why are they not buying this? This is other networks would buy it. Yeah, they would buy it, and it would tank. We're not buying it because it's not going to work, and we know why." So you ready?
Oh yeah.
Okay, 1 second though. I don't know. We keep pushing off the secret. By the way, guys, I'm just letting you know now. We're for sure going to go over the 45-minute mark. Consider this your 45-minute freebie because this is going to be big.
We're warning you. Whatever else you might have been planning tonight, you might put that aside.
Scrap your calendar.
Okay, so let me give you the example from my own life that triggers this whole thought process. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
When I was in my early 20s, I worked for a computer company in Hartford, Connecticut, and my job was, and I was kind of an attention deficit disorder software engineer, write code, but doesn't like to be pushed into a box, kind of flamboyant, maybe a little crazy, and somewhat unpredictable character. That was my nature. And I was maybe 22 or 23 years old. And, and I was getting along just fine that way. Thank you very much. And they liked the code I was writing. And most of the times it worked. Well, half the time it worked. I mean, I was a pretty good coder and I was getting away with an awful lot of really erratic behavior because I was a good coder. And then one day they put me in a room in an office with somebody from the computer company that sold the equipment that we used. And this person, older than I was, everybody was then. Now everybody's younger. But back then, everybody was older than I was. This guy was probably in his 30s, walked into the room, sat in a particular location, wore a certain kind of clothing. And before the meeting started, opened a briefcase, took out a document, a notepad, took out a really nice pen, and began taking notes of what everybody said in the room. Now, this is something this is way outside of my skill set. I'm random, flamboyant. I never write anything down. I vaguely remember what it is you told me. I act on that. This guy was very methodical, very organized, and he commanded the room. Everybody shut up, sat down, and looked at him. And he walked. He was there to solve a problem for us, and he did it by following a particular methodology that apparently I'd never seen this before. So what I learned from that is that by slowing down, by taking notes, by creating a presence in a room, you can influence other people in a room that suits your purposes, that works for you. And in other words, if I were just a little less flamboyant and a little bit more organized and a little bit more methodical, I could be a better version of myself the way that guy obviously was a better version of some prior self he used to be. Okay. Now we call that person a role model. And what's cool about role models is while we normally just refer to it as a kind of a conceptual thing, a role model is a person who behaves. They don't become a role model because they teach you how to be something. They become a role model because they act in a way that you respect and you imitate them, you mimic them, you adopt the behaviors that you respect of them. And that changes you. And half the time you change without even knowing it. You're not even aware of it. Okay. So there is this thing that happens in the human brain called role model patterning. It's been studied, and especially in early childhood education, it's how kids learn to be adults before they can even speak.
Wow.
I mean, it's way ahead of, it's so pre-verbal. It's the deepest kind of thinking you can achieve because you haven't layered any crap on top of it yet. It's pure learning. Absolutely pure. In the purest imaginable sense. So Okay, how do you use that? Okay, here we go. You ready? Here's the exercise. I want you both to think of a role model. Think of somebody in your life. You don't have to tell me who. Think of somebody, and if there are people watching or listening, think of somebody. You've got access to the comment section. So go ahead and think of somebody, give it some thought, somebody that impressed you so much with the way they behaved that you saw something in them that you then incorporated into your repertoire of behavior.
Jeremy.
Okay, here you go. Okay, now see, and if that's if I know you're being serious about this work because we actually talked about this before the program, right? Give me 1 or 2 words that describe Yermi as you were learning from him.
I feel like I should hide.
If you want, I can use a different
Yermi,
example.
Doc, put him backstage. No, I'm over here.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
What's the word I'm looking for? Belief? I guess belief. Believing in another.
Oh, that would be like empathy or trust.
Yeah.
Oh, those are all great words. And without getting too detailed in this, I would normally, in this exercise, if it were to play out, and it can take a while to do this, I would ask you what you saw him do that told you this. Because really, ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you know. It only matters what you do. Right. So whatever it is you do is who you are. What you do is who you are. And it's all about acts, not just about feelings, but about how those feelings drive action that influences other people. So there would have been 1 or 2 interactions you had with Yermi where he communicated that to you by something he did that made him a role model. Okay? Right. Yermi.
Yeah.
What do you got? Who do you got?
This is Baruch and I. We had this discussion about, what our business model is based off. The Chabad Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, definitely my role model. I've seen him, like you said, the actions that he actually did was that in 1994 he passed away after 40 years of leadership. He led his community for 40 years. And in 1994, when he passed away, he had 1,500 rabbis who were following him, who were each community leaders of their own. So he created 1,500 community leaders who were mimicking his behavior and what he was doing and following his learning. The New York Times wrote a piece on him. And they said, okay, now that this rabbi is dead and there's nobody who's going to take over him, the entire community will be dead after 20 years. So 20 years after his death, there's going to be no more following. That's what they predicted.
Did that turn out to be true?
We are 28 years later, and there are 7,000 rabbis.
So who follow that approach?
Yeah.
All right. So
that to me is mind blowing.
Well, and this is the important thing to remember is that the rabbi that started it all was following a rabbi himself.
That's correct.
And what he did was bring his followers to that following.
That's right.
And because that following outlived him, those people kept following that even after he passed on.
Right.
Now, and this is very important. Listen to me very carefully if you don't pick up anything else. People don't follow people. People follow what people follow.
Right.
That's how it works. If I do fall in love with you guys and you guys are wonderful and you're great friends, I like you both a lot. Ultimately, it's going to be the way you live your lives that I'm going to fall in love with. And the way you live your lives outlives you.
Right.
That would be what would continue in my heart and in my soul after you were gone. Or for that matter, after this podcast is over. What I pick up from you is going to change me. That's the nature of it. And if it's compelling and powerful enough, other people will see me doing that and they will begin to follow you through me. Although none of us are actually following anybody, we're all following something bigger than all of us. And when you're searching for meaning, that's where meaning lives. Right. Meaning lives there. It lives in outer space, in the sky, in heaven. It lives someplace beyond all of us. And role models lead us there, if that makes sense.